Welcome everybody, welcome to those members of the gallery and welcome to the viewers at home. Before we get started this evening, in line with state government restrictions, it remains mandatory for everyone to have signed in using the Safer WA QR code or the hard copy register. We will now move on with the meeting. If I could ask you please, if you could all stand up, and Deputy Mayor Bianca Sandri, could you read the opening prayer?
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name.
Amen. Councillor Thornton, could you please read the Acknowledgement of Country?
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Thanks everyone, you can take your seats. Please note that without prior approval, recording of this meeting is prohibited. Members of the public should also note that no action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to the written advice from the city being received. Takes to item 1, which is the official opening. Ladies and gentlemen, I now declare the council meeting of the 11th of May 2021 open at 7 p.m. Item 2, apologies, I have nil. Item 3, approve leave of absence. Myself is granted a leave of absence for the 25th of May 2021. Item 4, disclosure of interest. Community and Resource Committee, 4th of May 2021, Councillor Chris Hatton disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 ES1 as he is an acquaintance of the petitioner and Balcatta Buzz. Councillor Carlo Perko, I'll start again. Councillor Carlo Perkov disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 ES1 as he is a member of the social media group Balcatta Buzz. Councillor Adam Spagnolo disclosed an impartial interest in item 12.2 ES1 as members of the Balcatta Buzz are known to him and he is a member of Balcatta Buzz. I also believe that Councillor Boothman has submitted a declaration. Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Boothman has submitted a disclosure of interest affecting impartiality as he represents council on the Metro Inner North JDAP that will determine item 13.1 in relation to Karrinyup.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other disclosures of interest? No indication. Item 5, petitions. One petition has been received by the city. Councillor Ferrante, would you like to read out the verified petition, please? Sorry, Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The following e-petition containing 9 verified signatures has been received by the city. Residents receive their council rates on a yearly basis. One service that their rates pay for is waste removal or collecting of bins. Some countries around the world have opted to penalise residents by making them pay increased fees for things such as council-endorsed bin bags. If residents were to work on reducing their waste, then surely there would eventually be a reduced need for rubbish collection. I feel that a program which encourages residents to work on reducing their waste and reduce the amount of times they put their bins out could equate to paying slightly lower council rates for rubbish collection. This could be achieved by bins having barcodes on them that correspond to their address. These codes could be scanned by the rubbish trucks. Overall, it would hopefully lead to reduced landfill, reduced CO2 from rubbish trucks and slightly less costs for residents. I feel it could be a small win for everyone.
Thank you. Are there any other petitions, unverified petitions that have been received or presented? No indication. In that case, can I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the petitions? Moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Hatton. If we could go to the vote, please. Councillor Proud, just your vote. That's it. Councillor Boothman, I believe. Thank you. And that is unanimous, noting that Councillor Ree was not in the chamber for the vote, but also noting that she is now in attendance.
My apologies for being late, Mr. Mayor.
That's all right. No problem. Item 6, responses to previous questions from members of the public taken on notice, and all questions from the previous council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. Item 7, we will now move on to public question time. To enable all questions to be asked and responded to without the need for multiple extension of time, could I please request a mover and a seconder for the following motion? That in accordance with clause 5712 of the City of Stirling's Meeting Procedure Local Law 2009, public question time be extended for the time needed to respond to all questions from the members of the public who have registered. Can I move for that motion, please? Move Councillor Farrelly, seconder Councillor Hatton. If we can just vote on that, please. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. And I'll now move to the first person on the list, and I have Karen Wilson listed. If you'd like to come forward. Right, we'll go. If someone's not here, obviously the questions, that if we receive them or have received them, they'll be published with the minutes of the meeting with the answers in writing. Gemma Wilford, not in attendance. Andrew Freehan. Thank you. If you'd just like to come up, and if you just press on the bottom of the microphone there, the button of the red light, that's it. And just your name and your suburb, and then your question.
My name's Andrew Freehan. I live in Chewett Hill. My question is, the number one community aspiration from the Main Street Urban Design Study completed in 2017 was for an attractive and central intergenerational public gathering place, either a piazza or a plaza that integrates well with Robertson Reserve. What concrete progress has been made, specifically earmarked budget and milestones towards converting the car park site on the corner of Hutton and Main Street to a piazza or plaza that will meet these responding ratepayers' aspirations?
Thank you. Mr. Rodich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Freehan, for your question. The Main Street Urban Design Strategy was adopted by Council in February 2020. The strategy did not identify any one priority, but rather a series of quick wins as well as longer-term key improvements. The provision of a civic space on the existing car park site was never expected to be delivered in the short term, as it was not identified as a quick win. The quick wins included the provision of 2 small piazzas, one at the front of 213 Main Street and one on Hamilton Street, and these are currently in the process of being delivered.
Thank you. Yolanthe Spielman. Thank you. Just your name and suburb, please.
I'm Yolanta Spielman, yes. And then the question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Why has the City of Stirling not acted on placing traffic and parking restrictions, for example, to our parking signs in the surrounding streets of the shopping centre building? They are Elworthy, Somerton and Wincanton roads. These streets are dreadfully congested, and there are huge traffic hazards due to parking of the workers, the tradespeople, also shoppers, I believe, at the Curran-Up Centre. This will continue even when the centre is finished, we're sure of that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. Look, there have been a number of meetings with AMP in relation to parking. The most recent included a meeting with a resident group to articulate and identify solutions for the area. That meeting was on the 28th of April. AMP have established a parking area for tradesmen within the development site. There has been a noticeable reduction in indiscriminate parking in residential streets. However, some roads continue to experience these issues, and I appreciate that is in particular Wincanton, Somerton and Ellsworthy. Our parking team are currently preparing temporary parking restrictions, and we'll be looking to implement these in these streets as soon as possible, so that we can push those tradesmen traffic through to those identified parking areas within the development. So we are certainly acting to make those things happen as quickly as we can, because we appreciate that there has been a range of issues for a very long time.
Simon Wheeler. Oh, no, I think we've lost you. Sorry. and my hands are here, Mr. Wheeler. We'll just get you another microphone. Try that one.
Simon Wheeler Scarborough. Oh, God, yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor Owen, councillors who have read the city's rather terse responsible authority reports will note the many references to the lack of an activity centre plan, structure plan for the 2015 approval at Karrinyup West, and will appreciate that the lack of such strategic planning controls have allowed ad hoc and uncomplimentary development proposals to progress at the Karrinyup redevelopment sites. Council Resolution 0321-055 notes in points 8 and 9, in response to elector motions, that the City will prepare a report for the creation of a precinct structure plan or similar on the Karrinyup redevelopment site. So my question is, how is this report progressing, and is there a date in sight to move forward with these resolutions, noting that regardless of the outcome of the current proposal, there is more development to come at Karrinyup, with a probable development at North Court, potentially the library site, and Karrinyup residents cannot afford to wait another 7 years for strategic planning controls.
Sure. Mr Rodich?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Wheeler, for the question. We are preparing the report at the moment, going through details of what needs to be considered in the precinct structure plan, as well as the review of the Karrinyup Regional Centre guidelines. I expect a report to be provided to the Planning Development Committee in August this year.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Wheeler. Michael Sinclair.
Well, thank you very much. I'm here representing O Media, who's been the city's out-of-home advertising partner for the last 20 years.
Okay, so firstly, I will need you to say your name and suburb.
Sorry, Michael Sinclair, Dalkeith.
Thank you. And just before you continue, I've got to say this is unusual, and I would just like to say that council's tender process does not include a tenderer providing commentary at a public council meeting on another tenderer's submission. So you may just wish to take this into account before you...
Should I proceed?
Well, I've got to say it's up to you. I'm aware of some of the questions. They don't breach anything, but council hasn't made a determination on this. So I'm just cautioning that you want to proceed.
The reason for bringing this up is we think it's relevant before any contract's entered into.
Sure.
It's of a significant nature. So 3 questions. First being, what experience and validation has Global Smart Cities provided or demonstrated to the city of their ability to generate the estimated revenue for illuminated poster advertising and digital advertising on their bus shelters?
Yep. Yep, I'll get a answer for you. Mr Littleton?
Yeah, look, thank you, Your Worship. Look, the details of the preferred tenderer's experience and validation of revenue generation are commercial in confidence. The city's process for this tender included referee checks, financial risk assessments and probity assessments.
Thank you. What experience has Global Smart Cities demonstrated in procuring and deploying DDA-compliant illuminated bus shelters in Western Australia or in Australia?
Mr Littleton?
I can only reference my response to the first question, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And your third question, sir?
Replacement of the shelters is indicated in the evaluation justification as a very significant benefit. Is the council aware that replacement was not a requirement of the tender, nor was it requested?
Thank you. Mr Littleton?
Thank you. Council will decide tonight which tender will be the most advantageous for the city to accept. The information in the evaluation, justification and other relevant considerations will be taken into account when that decision is made.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michelle McCorkle? Thank you. Just your name and suburb, please. Oh, sorry, it's already on. Yep, that's it.
Great. I'm Michelle McCorkle from Karrinyup. So I just wanted to
Can I just get you to pull that down a little bit?
Oh,
Yep,
thanks.
that's better.
I just wanted to ask about, I think you talked about the parking situations around Karrinyup, but with the towers going up, I'm quite concerned. There's an awful lot of traffic in the morning at peak hour, and I'm just concerned about the impact of extra cars and people living in the area, what that's going to do.
Sure. I'll get Mr Rodich to respond on the parking. Or traffic, sorry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr McCorkle, for the question. The towers are under consideration still. As you're aware, the city's made a recommendation. to the Joint Development Assessment Panel to refuse the application. The city has raised traffic as one of their significant concerns with respect to the development.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can just add, look, we are very aware, as many of the residents here know, I live just down the road in Milverton. I drive past it every day, and I think I can certainly add that it's exacerbated exponentially at the moment, the traffic with the main roads works that have just been ongoing for what seems like a couple of years now. It seems like the drainage, the footpath works, the road works, and it is certainly exacerbating that. So we look forward to the end of that as well.
Thank you.
Claire Elliott. Your name and suburb, please.
Okay, I'm Claire Elliott. I live in Carrinup. I frequent the shopping centre there, and I find the roads on the perimeter of the shopping centre very narrow, and they are congested. And I was just wondering if we could actually, rather than having 50 k's an hour, make it 40 k's, particularly on Burrows, Devonport Street and Francis Avenue, please.
Sure. Mr. Littleton?
Look, thank you. Look, it's probably something we need to consider in the broader context of the development site. 50 kilometres per hour is the current speed zoning. It's a local area. The reality is that it's probably unlikely that you can travel much beyond 40 kilometres anyway, given the general traffic flow in that area. But look, it's probably something that we would prefer to consider in the broader context of the development, and happy to provide you with a more detailed response, Mrs. Elliott.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. And Sylvia Angelcola? Just your name and your suburb, please.
Sylvia in Inaloo. Good evening. My question is, I would like to know why one event organiser has occupied the amphitheatre for a period of approximately 8 years without the opportunity of any other event organiser occupying that space. I wrote a letter, I did get a response, but they didn't answer that question directly. So I'm here to find out from you all, how come that is as it is?
Sure, I'll see if Mr. Quirk can answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I don't have the specific details with me, but I'm certainly happy to have a conversation with you tomorrow and give you a better understanding of that. Obviously, the Scarborough Amphitheatre is a bookable space, so any community or commercial organisation can book for and pay for the hire of that space. So that would be my initial response, that anyone can book that area. But in regards to this specific booking, I'm more than happy to make contact with you and give you the clarity that you're seeking.
Wow, thank you very much. Unfortunately, due to work, I'm not able to address that tomorrow. But I would love to touch base with you on a day where I am free. What do I do to get in touch with you?
We'll have governance staff get your details off you,
Yes.
and we'll make sure we make contact with you and organise that for a time
Fabulous.
that suits you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And there was another question.
Yes, you can ask another question.
Penny, please, can you come and help? Okay. All right. It was actually her question, but anyway, the same event organiser holds a event at a place called Calibs in Subiaco, and I'll rephrase that. There is a event organiser that runs an event at Calibs restaurant in Subiaco. And this event organiser has combined with this event organiser that's holding the space at Scarborough Amphitheatre, and that organisation is funded by the government, and we would just like to know, is that in play that they merge together for an event held in a restaurant in the evening?
Okay. So I think
in
probably
a public space?
probably like
'Cause
the other
obviously-
one, best we take these offline, and Mr.
Okay.
Quirk is happy to spend some time with you and understand
That.
what your actual questions are regarding the event organiser and work out why you haven't got access.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I've got listed. Are there any questions we've missed or anyone who hasn't registered? If not, we will proceed. Item 8, application for leave of absence. Are there any applications for leave of absence, councillors? No indication. Item 9, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the council minutes of the 27th of April 2021 meeting? Move Councillor Spagnolo, seconded Councillor Farrelly. If we can vote on that, please. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 10, announcements by the presiding member, and I am very pleased and quite proud to be able to make this announcement this evening. Without embarrassing you, Keith, if I could maybe ask you to stand up. Maybe just even stand to the side a bit and face the gallery. I think let's make it really bad. Keith Rickman was awarded the Waste Champion for 2021. I'm very pleased to advise that last week, myself, along with the Chief Executive Officer Stuart Jardine and the Director of Infrastructure Michael Littleton, attended the State Waste Sorted Awards, where the Coordinator of Waste Services, Keith Rickman, was announced as a Waste Champion for 2021. The Waste Sorted Awards, previously known as the Infinity Awards, celebrate Western Australia's waste champions and recognise projects that avoid waste, recover value from waste streams and protect the environment. Keith has spent his whole working career working in the waste management industry, entirely at the City of Stirling. He is a highly valued team member of Team Stirling and has completed almost 50 years of dedicated and highly regarded service with the City. Keith implemented and initiated some of the biggest changes that the waste industry has seen in Western Australia. Keith proactively manages over 50 charity clothing bins in collaboration with some major charities in Western Australia. It's known as one of the most impressive partnerships within Australia. Keith's initiative was so outstanding it was recognised by the West Australian Local Government Authority, who used Keith's guidelines and procedures to develop the best practice to manage charity clothing bins across the state. And the City now also provides 2 charity clothing pickup days for residents. Keith also initiated a City partnership with WorkPower, which he tirelessly pursued and implemented a couple of years ago. The result has been absolutely tremendous, with WorkPower winning awards for their operation of the City's tip shop and the City winning national recognition in diversity and inclusion, amongst many other accolades. Keith has also supported the need to remove e-waste from landfill and pursued an approach at the Recycling Centre Balcatta that all e-waste was to be recycled, including non-scheme materials. Without a doubt, the City's year-on-year e-waste recycling success is a direct result of Keith's passion and commitment to improving waste outcomes for the community. I've only highlighted a very small snippet of what Keith's career and the legacy that he will leave when he retires from the City later this year. Keith, on behalf of Council, and of course on behalf of the ratepayers as well, congratulations on this very well-deserved award. We thank you sincerely for your many years of loyal and dedicated service to the City of Stirling and to the local community. Well done. And as I sit down, I should just acknowledge that his manager, Rick, is sitting next to him tonight and was also there last week. Item 11, unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. Now, councillors, given that there is, I'm guessing, a little bit of community interest in item 13.1, I suggest that item 13.1, Karrinyup Shopping Centre, Lots 7 and 11, house number 190 and 200 Karrinyup Road, Karrinyup, mixed-use development, 270, multiple dwellings and commercial tenancies be brought forward and considered in accordance with clause 4.2 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2009. If I can have a move and a second to do that. Move Councillor Sandry, second to Councillor Spagnolo. If we can just vote on that. Thank you. I have just received another disclosure on item 13.1 on the Karrinyup Shopping Centre. It's an impartial interest from Councillor Suzanne Migdale as this item comes to JDAP and she sits on JDAP. And I will note that Councillor Boothman and Councillor McDowell have left the chamber. Let me find 30.1. Councillors, do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Caddy.
Thank you. Can I please have the amended recommendation up? Perfect. Thank you.
If you'd like to read it out.
It is my very great pleasure to move that Council endorses the City's Responsible Authority report to the Metro Inner North Joint Development Assessment Panel, which recommends refusal of the proposed Karrinyup Shopping Centre, Lots 7 and 11, house number 190 and 200 Karrinyup Road, Karrinyup mixed-use development, 270 multiple dwellings and commercial tenancies. And 2, that Council endorses Councillor Felicity Farrelly with Councillor Karen Caddy as deputy if required to make a deputation request on behalf of Council at the Metro Inner North Joint Development Assessment Panel meeting regarding the mixed-use development at Karrinyup Shopping Centre.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Farrelly. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Can we put them separately? Yep. There's no one opposed. I will put that motion, move Councillor Caddy and seconded Councillor Farrelly. Item 1, if we can go to the vote. There's no debate, councillors. You had your chance. That is unanimous. And item 2, I will now put that to the vote. Can we just have the votes up, please? Thank you. And that is also carried with 4, Councillor Caddy, Farrelly, Ferrante, Hatton, Lagan. Oh, hang on, I've written the wrong line. Let me start again. Councillor Caddy, Farrelly, Ferrante, Hatton, Perkoff, Proud, Ree, Sargent, Spagnolo, Thornton and myself, and against Councillors Lakin and Sandri. So that motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. If we can just invite the councillors outside back in. Just while they're coming in, I would also just like to acknowledge the planning team at the City of Stirling. Mr Rodich, yourself and your team, I know, have spent a lot of time working with councillors, but also just going above and beyond to make what has been a difficult many months, I'm sure, with the community, just making it a little bit easier and providing the advice. So thank you so much for the work you've done to make this happen. You have done a good job. The residents
Mayor,
out there.
Mr Mayor, I also believe this is one of the best reports I've ever seen in the time that I've been on council. I'd like to thank the young planner Dean as well.
No, thank you,
and also Amanda.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's find out where we're at. Let's get back. So now it brings us to item 12, which is reports and recommendations of committees. And councillors will move on to audit committee items. 9.1, 2 and 3 go behind closed doors if they are pulled out. Councillors, are there any you wish to pull out this evening? Councillor Sandri, you have one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to pull out 12.1, 9.1.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Proud, you've got one.
Page 82, 12.2 ES1.
Thank you. Councillor Ree, you've got one.
Yes, please. May I have...
Sorry.
I don't think that last one was correct.
Sorry, what was that last one? Who? Councillor Proud. Right.
My apologies.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so not this one. Yep. I didn't look at the number when. Councillor Ree, you've got one.
Yes, please. May I have 12.19.3 on page 80, please? And may I also have 12.1 EA1 on page 19, please?
Yes. So perhaps the best way to cover these off, would you, let me just check with 12.1 EA1. Should we deal with all 3 of these behind closed doors, or can we deal with EA1 in normal council? Well, it's just it's a confidential agenda, it's an audit. Not this report. Let's move ahead with it. Let's have a crack. 12.1 EA1, Councillor Ree. Oh, we better go to the chair. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the recommendation on page 20.
Thank you. Seconder for that. Councillor Migdale. Councillor Ree, you're opposed? Or just a question? Councillor Ree, are you opposed or just a question?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so I'll go to the mover then to start. Councillor Lagan.
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Migdale.
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Right. Councillor Ree.
I think the Auditor General should be congratulated for actually looking more into local government than they have in the past, and I think that's very good and good benchmark, not necessarily with City of Stirling, but just across the board. I am concerned that some of these comments in here, we've noted that we are just receiving them, which is just an arbitrary adjective, which I do believe we need to change, and I've said it before. With number 2, that the observation for review by the executive team until completion. How do we know when they're ever completed? I mean, executive team could take a couple of years, it could take a couple of weeks. I would have thought this would have had an end date to be reviewed and brought back to the next audit committee. I don't think it should have executive team and completion. Otherwise, we don't know what's going on. Some of these issues that have been raised are quite significant, not only from the point of view of cost to the ratepayers, but they're also from the point of view of mental health, employees' work environment, there's OSH issues, there's risk management, there's a whole lot of management things that does affect the running of the council, which we're not involved in operational issues, but when it involves costing, which then becomes under the budget, then we have to question. So my point is, 1, I do not believe received, we should use that word. Secondly, I do not believe it should be executive team until it be completed. I believe it should be completed by the next audit, if not, advise accordingly.
Thank you.
And I could go into examples, but I don't think there's much point.
Yep. I'll get some comment from Ms Hawkins for you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Ree. With regards to those findings that come to the executive team, those are the minor risk findings. Similarly to the management action plan, they have the recommendations, the actions and a date that they need to be completed on, and that's what the executive team use to measure. So we are ensuring that all of those actions are completed, are evidenced by the internal auditor and are done so in the timeline. So certainly the internal auditor is still involved in that process, as he is for the higher mediums that come to the audit committee.
Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much for your comment. However, I very well know from reading a lot of the documentation, a lot of these items, for want of a word, items are not done within the prescribed time frame. They may be good reasons, COVID hitting us again, they all could be good reasons why they're not. So just having a time frame doesn't mean they're completed. My point is it should be coming back to council to say whether or not, or coming back to the next audit committee. I think the wording needs to be changed. I can't support this unless we change the wording, because I think it takes it away from the intent of staff of knowing that we are actually looking at these figures and that it has to come back to the audit committee by a reasonable time, and I know that might be a time frame of it, but it's got to have a report back. So I'm not happy about that it's worded. We used to have it, it used to come back to the audit committee, and I think that tidies it up. It's easier for staff as well, because you don't know who is actually looking at it.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other indication? If not, I'll go to Councillor Lagan. Do you want to close debate, Councillor?
Just a quick comment, Mr Mayor. The items that were listed as minor and the Director has made commentary on those are first dealt with by the exec team. They then are timelined, as we already had comment that they will be, and the oversight is the audit committee itself. And the questions are asked at audit committee, and in the last, probably the last 2 years at least, audit committee have been fairly rigorous in ensuring that the exec team were aware that items that were taking longer to complete should be focused on and completed. I have no concern over the timelines. I believe they're being dealt with.
Thank you, Councillor. And that closes debate, and I will put that to the vote. Thank you, and that motion is carried with Councillor Ree voting against it. Noting that 9.1 and 9.3 have been pulled out but will be dealt with later on in the confidential behind closed doors, I will move to Councillor David Lagan if you'd like to move the balance of reports for audit, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the balance of the report and note those items that will be dealt with under confidential.
Thank you, and a seconder for that, Councillor Migdale. I'll put that to the vote. Councillor Spagnolo and Boothman. Thank you, and that is unanimous, councillors. Councillors, will now move on to the community and resources items. No alternative motions were received by governance by midday. Items 12.2F4 and 12.2 Gov1 are required to be pulled out. Councillors, do you wish to pull out any other items? Councillor Proud, you're indicating.
Page 82, 12.2 ES1.
Thank you. Councillor Spagnolo.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Page 315, 12.2/9.1. I understand it's a confidential item, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, that's fine, so we can deal with that later. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. May I please have 12.2 CS1 on page 171, and may I please have 12.2 GOV1 on 300, which should have been automatically pulled because there's no recommendation.
Yep. Yeah, I've already mentioned that one.
And 12.2 TE2 on page 294, please.
All right, councillors. Yep. Okay, no other indication? No, okay, let's go back to 12.2 ES1 then. That's been pulled out by Councillor Proud. It's a request to modified speed limit on Delaunay Street in Balcatta. And if I can have Councillor Migdale as chair of that committee.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation on page 82.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hatton and Councillor Proud, you're opposed?
Yes, however, I don't believe I need to speak on it. I would just like to add an additional number 2 motion if the mover and seconder were happy with that. If the officers could...
Let's have a look and see if they are. Councillor Migdale and Councillor Hatton, would you like to have a read of that and see if you're happy with that? So it says that the city writes to Main Roads WA to request approval for the proposed speed zone trial on Delaunay Street and include a copy of the council report with the request.
Through you,
I
Mr.
would say
Mayor.
that's probably the outcome anyway, is it? Yep.
Is that's the outcome anyway? Yeah, okay. No?
No, I'm being told by the officer, Mr Littleton, could you confirm?
Yeah, look, just to confirm, Main Roads will need to support the change in speed zoning. It's not a city decision, it's a city recommendation to Main Roads that that we trial increasing the speed limit. So Main Roads will certainly need to be contacted. I think the part 2 of the recommendation simply is procedural.
So you're just happy to accept that as substantive?
I'm happy to accept that.
Councillor Hatton, are you happy to accept that? Just so it becomes part of the substantive motion? No? In that case, we'll open debate. Councillor Migdale? Let's just deal with this as... Well, it's only because we haven't even opened up debate, that's all. So it's... I don't think we can deal with it as an amendment unless we've actually opened up the item. So.
Point of clarification.
Yes. Councillor Spagnolo.
Point of clarification, Mr Mayor. I think the director pointed out that it's procedural, that number 2 happens automatically. If that's correct, well, what are we debating?
Necessary.
Well, So
It's a loaded addition.
just, you might want to retract that. Yeah.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
So it may be, but right now we've got someone who's opposed to the motion, so we're going to open debate and then we'll deal with it later on. I get what you're saying, councillor, but because we've got someone who's opposed to it, so the mover of the motion gets to speak. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that this item was debated robustly at committee the other night, and I really don't have anything further to add. Potentially, we could put the items separately if that would assist us with having this passed. Thank you.
I'll give the seconder, Councillor Hatton.
Yeah, no, I'm opposed to that addition. It does complicate. Sorry, Mayor. It complicates the vote. Originally, if we were to have that in there, it would put the report forward. Now, in that report, original report, it was recommended that the speed limit not be increased. Now, we've gone further than that. We've got an overwhelmingly unanimous vote, apart from one councillor, saying that the trial is a good idea. We don't want to complicate this particular recommendation. We want to just, it will go to main roads. We know that, but we don't want to complicate it. I just feel this complicates and it's unnecessary. It will happen anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, councillor, so I'll just give you a chance while you're standing up. It's kind of odd because it's been mentioned that there wants to be an addition. You're actually really debating the main substantive. This is your only chance. So all you've talked about is the addition. Do you actually want to speak about the motion?
Well,
you don't have to. Yeah. I'm just giving you the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I've made it very clear that the addition is not warranted.
But no, I'm not talking about the addition. I'm talking about your actual motion.
Yeah. Well, I can debate the motion as being the most sensible outcome on a very long, drawn out 5 or 6 years of debate on this at periods of council, and we finally come to a fairly unanimous decision in CRC, in the previous CRC, and we don't want to complicate it. We just want to move forward on this one. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Proud.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, we're not voting on the number 2. We're not debating
we're just talking about the substantive. So you can now, if you want to add number 2, talk about it, we can put it up as an amendment, whatever you want.
Well, I thought that's what you do. You go to the alternative to get it added.
Okay, so let's be clear so I want to be clear what I've done here is you didn't actually oppose the motion, you just asked if we can have an amendment, but to me...
Mr Mayor, point of order.
Yeah, no, just let me finish, please.
Okay.
You asked for an addition. No one was interested in it, but you said you're opposed to it. So I know that we're going to end up in a debate. I think it's only fair to move to the mover in a second to talk about the motion. So that's where we're at. So we're talking about the motion. If you want to talk about the motion, then say why you want to add another bit. You can do all that now. And if you want to test this and put it up as an amendment, we'll do it as an amendment.
Mr Mayor, I'm not against what the additional item is. Certainly I'm against and spoke strongly against the item at CNR. I don't necessarily want to repeat myself, although there were many councillors that weren't at CNR that didn't benefit from
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Knowledge.
Yes, councillors.
Just on another point of order, Mr Mayor, I thought I had precedence.
No, please.
Councillor Proud's talking like that addition is already on the table when it isn't.
I know. So, Councillor Spagnolo, have you got a point of order too?
I have indeed, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, look, I understood that second motion was not accepted by the mover and seconder. So if it wasn't accepted, why are we dealing with it?
We're not. We're dealing with the substantive. That's what I keep saying,
well,
Councillor.
Councillor Proud was talking about the second motion.
I think Councillor... Okay, let's...
And so were a few others.
Councillor... Viewers at home, welcome to Stirling. Councillor Proud.
I thought because it wasn't accepted, it would be considered and then...
Yeah, so, Councillor Proud, I can't make it any clearer. We're talking about a speed trial on Delaunay Street. If you'd like to put your recommendation, we will deal with it as an amendment. And I'll get a seconder if there is one, and we'll put it as an amendment.
I would like to put the number 2 as an amendment, please.
Thank you. Okay, is there a seconder for this amendment? There being no seconder, your amendment lapses. Would you like to speak about the substantive?
Now look what you've made me do. I didn't actually want to do
this. You did that
this.
all on your own, Councillor.
Well, not if that was accepted. I wouldn't have spoken. Look, from a road safety perspective, this is clearly unsafe, no matter which way you look at it. And I speak from experience. I've been road safety chair for the advisory group since 2007. I've also had time on the RAC board. That actually counts for something, and I have learnt quite a lot. Increasing speed limits increases risk and the severity of collisions, serious injury and fatalities. You can see pages 86 and 87 on that. Increasing the speed limit by 10 kilometres on Delaunay reduces travel time for up to 16 seconds, and from Jones Street of 11 seconds. It doesn't really achieve much. We have 3 current or very recent speed reduction projects. Residents and council are keen on reductions in speed to save lives. These items are Main Street, Beaufort Street and Scarborough Beach Road, which is yet to be approved by Main Roads, but we're hopeful for their approval for that speed limit decrease on Scarborough Beach Road. Sight distances on Delaunay are adequate for a 50-kilometre local distributor road. That's all listed on page 85. They are definitely not appropriate for a 60-kilometre road, especially travelling west from Natalie Street, downhill, over the crest of a hill towards Erindale. Drivers generally, when going over a crest, they gather speed automatically, not by putting their foot on the accelerator, simply by their vehicle running downhill. Travelling east along Delaunay, there are numerous crossovers entering Delaunay Street. Many of those vehicles are commercial and heavy vehicles. The city has almost 100 local distributor roads, all bar one have a 50-kilometre speed limit. The one local distributor which has a 60-kilometre speed limit is Australis in Mirrabooka area. It has no crossovers or driveways entering that street. The only 2 side roads have roundabouts at the intersections. As evidenced in the officer's report, page 85 again, councillors, the 85th percentile of vehicles are already travelling at or over 60 kilometres in a 50-kilometre speed limit zone. So increasing the speed limit to 60 will see drivers approaching or exceeding 70 kilometres. It's almost 60 now and a little bit over. That's human nature. That's actually what happens. And this is where your serious injuries, catastrophic injuries, and worse occur. The difference between 5 and 10 kilometres, Mr. Mayor, in any collision increases the risk of serious injury and death considerably. This is not to be discounted. It's a serious matter. The other thing, having 2 different speed limits, this is only going halfway up the street to Natalie from Erindale, it creates driver confusion. That's been evidenced on a number of roads.
30 seconds, councillor.
This report is littered with substantiated facts. Councillors, I'd actually be advocating for speed calming devices. Remember, speed kills, and we hear that every day in the newspaper, on the television, on the radio. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Spagnolo, did you want to debate? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. This particular matter has been going on for quite a number of years. There have been a lot of representations made to councillors and to members of parliament and also to Main Roads itself. Now, I don't think that anybody here wants to endanger anybody's life. And that's not really what we're trying to do. What we're trying to say is that there is a situation here where we have had several representations and we've had a petition with 600 people basically saying we would like the speed limit to be increased from 50 to 60 and gave us a whole series of reasons as to why we should be doing this. And I think that when the committee deliberated on this, what they decided was that those reasons had some validity. And based on that, the committee has made a decision. And the decision is that we raise the speed from 50 to 60, and I note, on a trial basis. And that's what's happening. I think the other thing too, if I can come back to the original question, Mr Mayor, there was talk about sending a report to Main Roads, the report that was presented to us by the staff. Now, it's my understanding that if the council has a different view to that of the officers, that what is presented to the statutory body is actually the reasons cited by the council going in a different direction, if you like, to that of the officers. Yes, the officers have presented, if you like, the professional view, but on the basis of the community view, the council has put forward something different. And I think that in the past, it's been my experience where the council has said, no, we don't want it this way, we want it that way. Well, then those reasons are cited and they are presented to the relevant authority on that basis. What's the point of going to Main Roads or any statutory body for that purpose and say to that statutory body, hey, listen, this is what we recommended, but that's what the council wants. You know, it kind of almost goes against it. The council has made a decision, and that decision is that it would like to trial 60 kilometres on that road, and it's given a lot of reasons. There are no houses in that street, it's a long straight road, and there are several more reasons which I won't bore the meeting with. So, Mr Mayor, it's my view that, number one, if we are sending something, because I think it's been pointed out that it's procedural, well, if it's procedural to send information to one of these bodies, that information needs to be the positive information that's actually been put through if this motion were to be put forward and adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boothman.
I was just going to say that, look, this matter will go to the Main Roads Department. They will make their own assessment and they will either support or not support. End of story.
Thank you. And with that, I'll go to Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I'd just like to agree with the comment about the fact of if 600 people sign a petition that live locally, I think we need to respect that. And I think that's one of the most important things about what people do locally, especially those who live in local wards. Also, I'd like to make the comment, page 87, where people have made the comment they're unaware of the speed limit that has actually been there since 2001. Now, police could have had an absolute delight there every day if they wanted to. If the police thought it was a really major issue, and most people are doing over 60, and the report says people thought it was 60, then obviously it's not a police issue from traffic. I think that this is a good idea, and let's go back to that little word. It says trial. It says a trial. It doesn't say we shall. It doesn't say we won't. It says it's a trial. And I think a trial is one of the most important tools that the City of Stirling has in which to show to ratepayers that, one, we're listening to them and if it works or not. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this. And I think it's important when you look at road safety perspectives that in some places they've increased the speed on various places to make sure the traffic actually flows. And having been on the RAC board for over 12 years and the local board here, I think that you look at that from a perspective of people and drivers, of what gets people moving. In that particular area, as was discussed the other day, with the entrance now on Amelia Street, with the big daycare centre down the bottom, it's caused a whole lot of other issues which are escalating. I think we need to respect the locals, respect the people that put in the petition, and respect the staff to say that, yes, let's see what the trial does. Thank you.
Councillor Perkoff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This was debated very well last week, and I thank those councillors who supported it. Because it's been mentioned this evening, Australis Avenue, thank you, Councillor Proud, can I let you know a couple of things, that the crash statistics kind of align pretty much with the ones that we received in the report about Delaunay. Australis was also initiated by the residents not being happy about it, and in fact, I believe that our own engineering team then asked for the investigation into the appropriateness to raise the speed limit on Australis.
This way, Councillor.
I beg your pardon?
To me, not to.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. You're not my mate. Yes, you are. And one other thing, interesting thing, that there is a bus route located on Australis Avenue with 5 curbside bus stops. So if you wanted to compare something to Delaunay Street, that's not the one you want to compare, but the speed limit was increased there. There's also King Edward Road in Osborne Park, 60 km/h speed limit there as well. Now, clear, concise signage is educational. As long as the Main Roads Department look at this and they do put this trial through years, clear, concise signage, I think we will be all the better for it. We know that inconsistencies exist within our metro area, within our local streets, where speed is one speed here, then it changes again. We understand that, everyone knows it's been talked about, but local people and local businesses using these local roads have spoken. 629 signatures, majority of those from the actual local people, not outside the area, as per our stats. And look, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And with that, I think Councillor Farrelly.
Look, my apologies. I wasn't at that committee meeting, so, and I do realise how much you miss when you don't turn up. When you look at the amount of, there are a number of people, it's probably not a huge percentage, that have made a comment on the 629 that are supporting the 60k per hour. As a councillor who's just had part of the ward requesting 50 on a road of a similar nature, that it is really interesting that we were even considering raising a speed, regardless, and I have to say regardless of what the local population want, because it really is important that we do actually put across to the public that we are concerned about things of this nature, where dropping the speed limit does save lives. I have to agree with Councillor Proud on this one. I just don't think we want to put something forward that is really led by just a few seconds or a few minutes for those that are driving along there. If there is other problems associated with that roads that we have allowed to occur because of our planning, I think we need to address that. But in terms of the road itself, I think we should be keeping it to 50k per hour. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. And is there any more debate? If not, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Nothing further, thank you.
And I will.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Were we going to look at number 2 as a separate item or not?
No, your motion lapsed. You put it up as an amendment and there was no seconder for your motion. So there was no number 2.
Great.
Sorry, but it was tested. We put it up as an amendment. There was no seconder.
So nobody's going to write to Main Roads anyway because you've just taken
Councillor,
it out.
Councillor, please. So we have one motion, and that is a substantive motion. That's the only one we're dealing with, and it's moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Hatton. I'll now put that to the vote. Thank you, and that motion is carried with Councillor Proud and Councillor Farrelly voting against. We'll now go to item 12.2 CS1, commemorative memorials and plaques policy. It's been pulled out by Councillor Ree. Councillor Migdale, as chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the committee's recommendation on page 172.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Caddy. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Ree. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to get into debate on this item again. It has been debated at committee thoroughly, and I am for this item, and I hope that you all support it. Thank you.
Councillor Caddy.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I wasn't at committee, but I have worked with the officers offline on this policy, had a lot of questions, but they've addressed those questions, and some of the changes that have been made, I think, make the policy a little bit more flexible and, you know, perhaps just strengthened it a bit. So, look, I'm really happy with where it's landed. I think it gives us some really good guidance as to how to deal with these requests when they come through. but it also gives the policy some flexibility. So when we do have unusual circumstances, the officers have the ability to deal with that as well. So look, I'm really comfortable to support this tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Well, first I'd like to know what happened to my notice of motion that was actually put forward within the time frame, etc., which had a comment backwards and forwards and should have been in this report, should have been in the agenda. It's not there. Nothing that was said is adopted or even included, please.
Okay, so as a separate notice of motion or part of this motion? Oh,
There was a separate notice of motion to call up the issues that I raised at committee and to tidy it all up. I put in a notice of motion within the time frame.
So my memory of that is governance contacted you and suggested it would counterproductive to have a notice of motion at the end of this meeting presented when we're dealing with an item that's actually on the agenda, that you would be better off putting it up now as some sort of alternative and debating it. Otherwise, this motion either passes or lapses, and then you put up a notice of motion dealing with the same thing at the end of the meeting, ready for next week.
If I can clarify that, because around the table and from the staff, the notices of motion have to now be before the committee meeting, not after, which to me is behind after the horse has bolted. When we're at committee, there's things that are raised on committee that come to mind, which makes councillors around the table think maybe we should have a notice of motion to change that. Because it's now the other way, that you have to put it in before the committee meeting, I didn't have much of a choice. So I put it in before the committee meeting to make sure that it came to this table, which it hasn't, which is actually a breach of the Act because I put in a notice of motion,
Okay, so let me clarify.
and it's not here.
Let me clarify again. It wouldn't matter if you put a notice of motion relating to this exact item in time or not in time. My comment is, it seems very counterproductive to have a notice of motion dealing with this exact item because you want to put an alternative recommendation up that relates to this. Why would we put it up as a notice of motion at the end of the meeting when we are dealing with the item now? Read it out, put it up, and let's debate what you want to change.
The notice of motion actually was part of it was a new item that wasn't included in the agenda, wasn't included in the policy, so I put it up as a separate, which Mr Quirk actually said in his come back to me that you could put it in as a separate notice of motion, not necessarily a recommendation too, but it could have been. I was of the opinion, one, it would be a notice of motion as per our standing orders, as per the Act, or it would be incorporated into this report. Neither one of them has happened. I don't know why we have any standing orders if we're not, or meeting procedures if we're not going to follow it.
Okay, so I'm happy to stand by what I've said, and I think it makes perfect sense. And I'm happy to take that offline later. And if you've got an issue, you can write a letter of complaint about it. But right now, let's deal with the item here. And I suggest you've got your opportunity to discuss this and discuss what you want to change relating to this item.
Well, if the staff already should have it, I'd like to bring it up, please, if they can, unless they've thrown it away.
So you're seeking to put an amendment on this, or would you like to? Like, it's not this. There's a motion on the table, and you're opposed to it.
Well, that would be nicer.
So you have an alternative recommendation you want to foreshadow?
The one up on the board there, investigates, that is partially the first one that got changed by Mr Quirk. And I think from memory...
Let's not worry about everyone else. Let's worry about what you want to do right now.
Well, I'm trying to deal with the officers to make it easier, Mr Mayor, and unfortunately that didn't work that way. But I thank Mr Quirk for helping. The
subtitle said not helping. So
I didn't name who wasn't helpful, thank you. To amend the policy to include the definitions as attached, but it also was to amend the policy to include the fact that if there are any plaques, then it should come to council for approval. Now, I did ask the question, how many plaques there were, and it was supposed to get something in our bag as an idea, which we didn't
So
get.
I'm trying to help you here. Can we get these on the screen at the same time so I can see the original one and what you want to have? And let's work out if some of this can be put in as an amendment and we can deal with it, which would be a logical way. And if we can't do that, we'll hold it over. So let's have a look.
Mr Mayor, I'd also like to
No, you can't yet, please. No, you can't support anything yet. Let's have a look at this.
But I understood.
Councillor, just wait. Let's. So. Okay, so you don't want to have a look at this. So if you want to stop speaking, you just want to leave it at that and we'll have someone hold it over. You happy with that? Councillor Sandri?
Hi, Mr Mayor. I would like to hold the item over pending further information to the next
Councillor
council
Frandy's happy to
meeting.
second that. It's
Thank
a
you.
procedural motion to hold it over and let's see if we can amalgamate them both. Let's put it to a vote, please. And that motion is, I think we've got one more to go. Okay, Councillor Farrelly, you vote. That motion is carried with Councillor Boothman, Caddy, Farrelly, Frandy, Hatton, Lagan, Perkoff, Rees, Sandry, Sargent, Thornton and myself voting for, and against we have Councillor Migdale, Proud and Spagnolo. All I can say is lucky we don't have to do that again at the end of the meeting. And we'll now go on to item 12.2 F4, Network Renewal Underground Program Pilot. Absolute majority vote required on this one on 283. Councillor Migdale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation of committee.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Caddy. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that motion. Have Councillor Spagnolo, just your vote. That motion is unanimous and carried. Thank you, councillors. Was TE2 pulled out? Oh, we do have TE2 pulled out as well. Councillor Ree, are you able to do this without going behind closed doors?
Question, if I may, that should...
So,
just...
no, we can't have it. Well, I don't think we can have a question unless it's on the table.
That's right.
Is it?
The question, what I'm going to ask, is with regard to the fact that Councillor Ferranti put up a motion with regard to signage and election signage. I thought that we were, with this advertising, we were going to incorporate it into that.
No, this is a bus shelter tender.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying.
It's only for a small amount of the...
No, that on the
Yep.
tender that they can't put political ads. We did talk about this
I don't.
before.
That's not related to this. This is about awarding a tender, so it's nothing to do with this.
But if it's not in the tender documentation, then they can have what they want, so therefore I'll vote against it.
Okay. All right. So. No, I'm just trying to work out. So it's just a. Right. So let's just put. Let's have a. Well, we have to have a mover of a motion. So let's have chair of the committee. Would you like to move the motion? 294.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation of committee.
Thank you. Is there anyone seconded? Councillor Lagan.
I just have a question, Mr Mayor.
Okay. So are you both comfortable we can do this without going behind closed doors? I asked this before.
Look, I'm not sure because...
No, I don't want you to debate it. I just want a yes or no.
No, I do want to ask some questions regarding it, so maybe behind closed doors.
All right. So I suggest... Let's just hold it until the end. I think it's going to get too tricky because I can see the questions are heading. We have Item 12.2 GOV1, proposed confidentiality of council business policy. It's been pulled out by Councillor Reid. Councillor McDowell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move option 1 of the alt rec on the page attached to our...
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lagan. Opposed? Councillor Reid. Councillor McDowell.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this item has been dealt with on a number of occasions. The members of the committee were privy to the information that there is now a policy for employees' code of conduct. That was in the Friday information that was sent to all elected members. And the option that's been given to us, given that we have all of the sections of the Act, the code of conduct for elected members, the code of conduct for employees, and in that code of conduct it does talk about confidential items and confidentiality. I agree with the alternative recommendation that we do not need a separate policy, and that in fact the issue is covered now in all of the documentation that's required at the city, and we do meet the requirements of the changes requested at local government.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. As the person that put up about the confidentiality policy, I do not believe, as I said the other day, that it actually, and a couple of councillors said the same, that it doesn't address the concerns. If I go through option 1, which if that is what's on the board, then I ask for it to be put separately. I'd just like to ask if number 3, if I could be please advise whether legally under the Local Government Act that is allowed, which and also under our meeting procedure guidelines, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll get Mr Blanchard to strengthen my response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it does, and it's open to council to decide to do that when the local law comes back to council after public advertising.
Councillor Reid.
Up to council or up to the presiding member, please, because neither one's actually written in. So it makes a difference. This actually says the meeting procedure guidelines. The presiding member, the chief executive officer, Mr Blanchard just said council. There is a huge difference. Please explain.
Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, Mr Mayor, that my answer was slightly confusing. Council will decide when the meeting procedures come back after public advertising who decides whether or not to allow deputations on confidential items. So we will include a draft provision, but it will be ultimately up to council to set what it wants the meeting procedures to be. If council wants council to decide, we'll put that in. If we're recommending here the presiding member and the CEO, council could decide something different as well.
Councillor Reid.
That's a better answer. With regard to the draft of the meeting procedure local laws, are we sending them out to advertising?
Yes, I think he just said that.
Thank you, Mr. B. Yes, council has resolved to advertise that in accordance with the Act.
I thought that was the case, but how come it's not actually written here as option 1 and included in here that it goes out for advertising and comes back? Because it's actually not written in here, and it might be one of those things that fall through the gap. So I think it should be incorporated in there to make sure. Because people reading it won't know that it's not.
Yep, Mr Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not quite sure what the councillor is asking.
Why isn't it written in this motion that it's out for advertising?
Because council's already resolved to put the meeting procedures out for advertising.
Councillor Reid.
I know that, but people don't know that. But reading this, they won't know that.
Well, if they're reading this, they've already read the minutes of the resolution where we've put it out to advertising.
Which is a while ago. I don't, as I said, I don't believe we can continue the way it's written. It doesn't say that it's going to go for advertising, and people don't read, some people don't read the minutes every week, so I think that is not a good idea. I think also that if we look at the alternative, the changes made since the previous draft were presented for council, that is true. There were a lot of changes made which some people may not actually realise, but it still doesn't address the concerns of the confidentiality. And I did raise a whole lot of examples, and I'm quite happy to write a book on examples if required, but I don't think this is addressing the issues that we have today. So I do ask that if option one,
I'll put them separately.
Put them separately, and if we're not going to include advertising in this particular motion, I find that quite disappointing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to debate? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close debate.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And I will put these separately. So I'll put, first of all, I'll put number 1. Councillor Perkoff. Thank you. And that motion is carried with Councillor Ree voting against. I'll now put motion 2. That is unanimous. I'll put item 3. Caddy and Farrelly. Just Caddy. And that motion is carried with Councillor Ree and Farrelly voting against. And I'll now put item 4. Councillor Proud. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 12.291 has been pulled out, but we'll deal with that with a confidential agenda. So, given that, Councillor Migdale, would you like to, with the exception of 12.29.1, move the balance of reports, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With the exception of 12.29.1, I'd like to move the balance of reports. And
apologies, and with TE2. Thank you for that.
Which one?
So
TE2, 12.2 TE2.
Yeah. Great. So second, Councillor Ferrante. So what we're doing is moving the balance of reports with the exception of 12.2 TE2 and 12.29.1, which will be dealt with in the confidential. If we can go to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 13. 13.1 we have dealt with. And we'll move on to item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given. Item 14.1, notice a motion from Councillor Felicity Farrelly, walking and cycling path safety between Scarborough Beach and Trigg, on page 327. So I have a mover of a motion. Councillor Farrelly.
I'd like to move the motion, the alternate motion actually, that was in your set of notes.
Yep.
That is the, now I noticed that additional to that is there's an additional alt rec from Councillor Ree, which I think could be.
I don't think this is the one you want to move.
Isn't it?
I'm pretty sure it would.
I'm sorry. Get back to my. It is, isn't it?
That you do not proceed.
No. This is the one where the council refers consideration of notice of motion.
That's better.
The walking and cycling path safety between Scarborough Beach and Trigg to allow an elected member workshop to be held on the various options for a separated shared path along West Coast Highway between Scarborough and Trigg. And the rationale for that is the matter is complex. I've spoken to the director. I actually didn't expect them to come out with a decision, which they did provide on the initial agenda, because it is a complex matter and requires further consideration and discussion on the merits of the various options available, and it also requires a comprehensive community consultation. to address pedestrian and cyclist movement along the shared path in this area. I'm looking though at the next, the additional recommendation from Councillor Ree, and I believe that could be included in the part 2 could be included as part of that workshop.
So I would say it could be, but you're basically saying bring it back to a workshop to talk about it, and then you're trying to come up with the outcome of the workshop. I don't think you need it. I think it's clear that as part of the cycleway between, you could change, yep, you could put between Brighton Beach, perhaps, or southern.
No, from the boundary into Cambridge as well, because we're basically saying.
Okay, well, so between southern, I'm just trying to make it simpler for you, between southern boundary, yep.
Okay.
And Trig. Let's just. Councillor Ree has seconded that.
We've done member workshop.
Is there anyone opposed? If not, I will put that motion.
Did you get a second?
Yeah. Okay, just a show of hands, councillors. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll go on to item 14.2, notice of motion from Councillor Farrelly, congestion in Scarborough redevelopment area on page 336. Is there any motion?
Sorry, I just have to get to it.
That's all right.
Well, where is it? It's on the board. Okay. Yes, the alternative is that the city investigates. Oh, I can't see it. Can you put that up a bit, please?
Is that the one, or is it, what's the one underneath?
That
Which one do you want?
I'll go for the. I'll go for the alternative one because it actually looks at putting it through.
So don't debate it, just read the motion that you've got now.
Okay.
So
that a report be presented to the Community and Resource Committee meeting to be held 27th of something, June, is it?
27th of July.
Which identifies issues and solutions regarding on-street parking in the Scarborough redevelopment area. And if I can have that just a bit up, please.
Can we just move it up, please?
Reason for the thing, thanks.
So officers require time to investigate and report on issues presented in the notice of motion.
Yeah, I think I don't want it to be done hurriedly. I want them to actually have the time.
So I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Caddy. Is there anyone opposed to this? Just a show of hands, councillors. And that is.
This is in favour?
This is encouraged.
What did I say?
Opposed.
Oh, geez. That was a slip of the tongue. Apologies. I'm assuming we're all in favour, but maybe we'll do that again. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Yeah. Check that recording later. Item 14.3, notice of motion from Councillor Elizabeth Ree, oral history interviews on page 340. Councillor Ree.
Yep, thank you very much.
Councillor Farrell, you can just turn your mic off for me.
The council considers listing $21,000 within the draft 2021-2022 budget as part of the action plan enabling the recording of oral histories from seniors within retirement centres and autumn club seniors, seniors clubs in each city of Stirling ward to verbally capture the history of their local area.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Farrelly. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that motion. Maybe we'll just go to the vote and put your hands up in the air. That's right. That's right. Councillors? Councillors, hands in the air. Doesn't matter. Hands are in the air. That's it. It's unanimous. Item 14.4, notice of motion, Councillor Susan Migdale, local government representation on Mount Lawley Senior High School and Whopper Working Group, page 345. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Migdale?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the notice of motion on page 345.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrante, seconded. Anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that.
We should oppose it.
Quick, is that a question? Yep. Does your mic? Yep.
Was there consideration of putting an officer on there as well?
I think we've already got that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Can I ask a question? Was there any consideration of putting yourself, Mr Mayor, on, considering the debate that went on recently about councillors hopping into outside committees? I thought it was that Mayor had to be first. No?
No, the Mayor doesn't have to be first at all. This is a motion that's been put up by the ward councillors that request representation. If you're opposed, you're welcome to be opposed. No? All right, then I'll put that motion. And that, Councillor Ferrante? That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.5, notice of motion. Councillor Joe Ferrante, electoral advertising material, page 361. Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation as put forward.
What one?
On page
Is that the
361, thank you.
The one, that one on the board?
Yes.
Councillor,
366.
The alt rec?
the alt rec or your? Yep.
No, not the alt rec, the original recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Migdale has seconded that. Is there anyone opposed? No, I'll put that. That motion is carried with Councillor Caddy and Hatton voting against. 14.6, notice of motion. Councillor Elizabeth Ree, events at Jackadder Lake. Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much. Where are we? No, we're not. We're on another page. We are now going down to 399, that the council approves the city-delivered event at Jackadder Lake in Woodlands in 2021 for a complete change. Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Proud. Is there anyone opposed? A question?
Thank you. Should there be a budget amount for consideration in the upcoming budget in that recommendation?
Mr Quirk?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is already an allocation for neighbourhood events. So the intention was to deliver an event in Jackadder Lake out of that funding amount.
Okay. In that case, I will put that motion. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Brings us to item 15, which is notices of motion for consideration at the next meeting. Do I have any noms? Councillor Sargent. There's a very eager raising of your hand, councillor.
You missed me before, Mr Mayor. On the board, Mr Mayor, that the city investigate a new service run with the help of volunteers called Seniors Watch. And did you want me to give reasons, or it's pretty self-explanatory?
Yeah, you can read it out.
The city provides several services already, one being Holiday Watch, which is run through the community, city's community safety team. The other being Meals on Wheels, which provides a service, two services, the meals to residents and also a checkup while they actually deliver that meal. So what I'm proposing is we get rid of the meal and just do the checkup.
Well, or add it. Let's not. Good. Thank you. Is there any other indication? If not, I'll go to item 16, questions by members of which due notice have been given. I have nil. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature. I have nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors. Councillors, can I have a move? I have a motion to go behind closed doors. Move Councillor Caddy. Seconded Councillor Perkov. If we can just show of hands, councillors, and that is unanimous, and we'll go behind closed doors to deal with item 9.1, 9.3, 12.2, 9.1 and 12.2 TE. the doors. Thank you. And that brings us to item 19, which is closure of the meeting. And I now declare the meeting closed at 9:17 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance this evening, and to those viewers who are still with us at home, thanks for joining us, and good night from us.